And to that I say hello, good evening, and welcome. I am Samuel Trapp. This is International Flavor. You are listening to Damn Radio. Damn, glad to have you. Damn without the N, by the way, because we don't swear on this freaking show. Okay, so we don't do any of that stuff. Feeling a little better tonight. I went back and listened to part of my show last night, and I was so tired, and I knew that I was so tired. I hadn't slept but a freaking hour, and I passed out and slept last night. So hopefully, I'm doing a little better tonight. Got a little bit of sleep. It was a big plus for me. If you feel like calling in, I shall be happy to take your call, 573-746-8020, and I get the 80, as usual. The 80's mine, the 20 is yours, the way it should be. There's so much news to go into. I thought I wanted to, and I still want to, and I may actually get to it. I'm doing some license evaluation in the corrupt state of Missouri, in the nonsensically run state of Missouri, in the Missouri bar corrupt area that we can talk about, that really the bar has no granted authority to regulate in the way that they regulate. They don't get it from the executive branch. They didn't get it from the judicial branch because they never gave them anything by rule. There's nothing there that grants them authority by rule, and there's nothing. Well, the executive branch runs all the other professions, and has regulations related there too. Or the legislative branch has found it prudent to implement statutory regulation, and so many license holders are regulated by either regulation or statute. All it can be is statute, regulation, or rule. And the Missouri Bar has none of those things. They just create their own, just like they did the nonpartisan Judicial Selection Committee, which is anything but nonpartisan and anything but with the authority granted by somebody to select. So who gets to select all your judges? The Missouri Bar. So, if you trust the Missouri Bar and no elected official of any kind, because none of them are elected, they're just a little club, little group of guys that get together and they destroy certain people and elevate others to the post of judge. So, who do you think gets put in there? Those who lick the rear end, or those who question everything? Sounds like a radio station a radio show I once knew, called Question Everything. Wonder whatever happened to that show or that guy. No idea. I think I still might drink a lot of tea tonight, just because maybe it was the tea that helped me sleep last night. Who can tell? It's called Sleep Tea, and I bought the Russian version this time. I got some Russian sleep tea, and that stuff might be a little more powerful than your yogi sleep tea that you find in the old Walmarts. And why is Walmarts always has to have an S on the end? Why is that? I don't understand. It's a Missouri thing. Kind of like saying, I done did this. Well, you done did it. Didn't you do it twice? I done did it. Wonder what that means. Or I done it. That sounds good also. Anyway, I digress. I regress probably, but we can handle that as well. So there was an interesting article. And I'm going to go through a bunch of them, and hopefully we still get the last half hour or so to go through some of the licensing processes that I'm very much interested in. But right now, Bild, the German newspaper, says that Russia wants 7 oblasts, which means region, basically, and not just 4. That they just want to take them all. Oh my God, here we go again. Russia's gonna take over the planet, and what are we gonna do about it? How in the world are we ever going to survive with Russia wanting 7 regions of Ukraine instead of the 4, actually 5 if you count Crimea, that they already have taken? Hello, how's the family? So basically, this came from Build. Russia's next targets could be Sumy, Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk regions, said Build. Gee, these guys are geniuses. I've been saying it forever, and Russia's already in at least 2 of them, and they've dug into Dnipropetrovsk a little bit from the Zaporozhye region. They've been in Sumy since they crossed the Kursk region and started creating a buffer zone a couple of weeks ago, and Kharkov the exact same thing. And why are they doing this? Because just like Putin said, they are even now creating a buffer zone. So we're creating a buffer zone. The buffer zone is with the intent to fight the Germans and everybody else who wants to say that it's okay for Ukraine to use intermediate range missiles, which, by the way, my job was helping to eliminate for the world. Back when I mattered and was a arms control inspector, interpreter, and nuclear threshold test ban treaty interpreter, but nobody cares about all that stuff. Now we pass them out to Ukrainians who, oh geez, they're not corrupt, not at all. Our government isn't corrupt. So the brutal war in Ukraine continues with no end in sight, with Trump refusing to participate in peace talks. Why would he participate in peace talks? And Putin refusing to stop his offensive. The situation is clearly heading toward escalation, says the publication. Sounds like they got a bunch of geniuses working over there, don't you think? Because Putin has said, we are not stopping the offensive until we'll still negotiate. But we're not doing it just for the sake of having a ceasefire. We're not going to do that. We will do it in an effort to stop the war and the bloodshed, but we won't do it just to give Kiev a time to rebuild and regroup and get more troops to the front line. And we certainly won't do it because Europe wants us to, or because Trump says Putin's crazy. That's not a good reason to stop your offensive. In fact, it's arguably justification for continuing. But I don't believe Putin's crazy, not remotely. So, according to Build, also a major offensive by the Russian armed forces will begin in June. Actually, it already started a couple of days ago, so they're behind the target on that one too. And will target Sumy, Kharkov, and Dnipropetrovsk. These geniuses are great at reporting what will happen after it's already happened. Russia will try to break through these areas in order to create additional complications for future negotiations. No, they're doing it to create a buffer zone, which they already said. Build's not too bright, apparently. In addition to the 4 already formally occupied, believes military analyst Nico Lang. Nico Lang needs to get a different job if he's a military analyst. Frankly, hate to say it, but I'm better than you, dude, at least in this area. Why don't you go to Gaza or somewhere like that, or Syria? Because I don't know much about that stuff, and we'll have me do all the analyzing of what's going on in the Ukraine, as JR would call it. Russia is sending, get this, thousands of new soldiers and tanks to the front, and has also modernized its air arsenal. It's been modernizing its air arsenal for years. So once again, you're late. The Russian army has learned from the drone war, produced a lot of new drones, and now wants to use them. They've been using them. And what do you think Ukraine's doing? The Russians are now hunting for Ukrainian logistics systems and destroying them dozens of times a day, said Lang. Boy, he is a genius. As reported by EA Daily, Russian troops are being pulled to the borders of the Kharkiv and Sumy regions, with 60 to 70,000 troops already concentrated there. They also say there's 150,000 currently hanging out just south of the Zaporizhia region. They are all ready to go in, and tons of new equipment. What was the number? I think they said 1,500 new tanks were ready to go. And some of the newer versions, T-14 Armadas, and then some of the T-90s, and I mean, these are This is late news, people, but I thought I'd give it to you anyway. Sky News military analyst Michael Clark believes that these forces are needed to tie down the Ukrainian forces in the north, but that does not mean that they're going to seize towns across Kharkiv. I saw a report yesterday that showed exactly how they're going to do it and that they're already in the process of doing it. They crossed a couple of little rivers up across into the Kharkiv region from I forget what the name of the river is. Wish I could remember, but I don't. And they crossed into there from south of the what is the name of that place? Belgorod region, south of Belgorod. They crossed over, and so they're in the east side of Sumy over there, and on the west side of Sumy, they're coming in from Kursk and Bryansk areas over there. So if you know your geography, and I always forget my geography because there's far too many. Hell, I can barely remember my own states. Used to be I could tell you the capital of every single state quickly. Now it'd take me quite a while, but I can still probably get most of it. But anyway, there you have it. That is the story. Interesting story. Thank you, Build, for being such geniuses, I will say. Who is this? Bastirkin Поставил на control. What is this? Why is Bastirkin talking about? Let's translate to English real quick so I can share it with you. Oh, it won't let me. Not this page, unfortunately. We are on the Russian side of the fence on this one with no translation facility. So, but it's a murder case anyway, so we won't go there. I read something else. Did I just delete it? I just read a report about in Ukraine, in the right south of the Kursk region, in Sumy, where the Russians are beating the snot out of the Ukrainians, there was a pair of soldiers that couldn't take the shelling anymore or the drone attacks. And when they tried to retreat, they didn't want to get killed by their own forces, which is constantly being reported upon from the soldiers that have surrendered to Russia. Those people are reporting that their own soldiers are killing them if they try to retreat or they don't keep going forward. So they're getting so these people committed suicide. That's I mean, who knows about the truth of that? Let's see. Here's one about a Ukrainian prisoner taught. Here's what it says. Here's the article. Ukrainian prisoner tells how the Ukraine armed forces taught them how to surrender correctly. So if you're going to surrender correctly. So maybe they're not all getting killed on the way back. And this came out from RIA Novosti. Ukrainian prisoner Alexander Simonchuk told the Russian Defense Ministry in a video that the Ukrainian Armed Forces Command taught mobilized soldiers to surrender during their training. Geez, that's great. A serviceman of the 78th Airborne Assault Regiment of the Armed Forces of Ukraine was captured by the Russians in Sumy. In particular, Simonchuk said that the mobilized soldiers were taught how to properly surrender during short 2 to 3 hour classes, how to behave properly in captivity, what can be done, what cannot, what is necessary, and what is unnecessary, said Simonchuk. According to him, the command recommended that they not behave aggressively or too actively, so better be passive, or you might get killed, is what they're saying. At the same time, Simonchuk said the Ukrainian Armed Forces Command is trying to hide the dead by recording them as missing. According to him, such practice is widespread in the Ukraine Armed Forces units stationed in the village of Nikolskaya in Sumy Oblast and its nearby surroundings. Now, I've read quite a few stories about that where they say that the Ukrainian commanders, if they can keep them as missing, can take their money because the money still gets paid to them. And so the money comes in and they get to take it. So it never goes on. But if they're said that they're dead, then the money will go to the family. But that money goes through the command as well. And so let's say they get 100,000 hryvnia. I don't remember the exact amount that they get, but allegedly the commanders are taking a bunch of that money, or they're taking all the salary and still listing them as alive when they aren't. And that way they still get the money to pay them. Very curious. Lots of bad things going on over there in their war, wouldn't you say? Again, I will remind you, you can call in 573-746-8020, and I would be happy to chat with you about just about anything, but it'd be better to keep it to the topic I'm already chatting about, so that could be fun. Let us see where we go from here. There's the Ukrainian prisoner story. I don't want to tell you the Russian story because I can't interpret it on the fly, and often I swap it to the English version so I can read it. Here is a very funny one. Everybody knows that Margarita Simonyan is the chief of RT, Russia Today, editor-in-chief. And I like to listen to her. She doesn't write stories anymore in the newspaper, so you got to seek her out. But she has a YouTube channel that's called Pakani Zabanili, and Zabanirovat, to ban someone, you ban them. And she's basically, the channel is called Until They Ban Me. So keep listening until they ban me, because she believes that YouTube will ban her, and they have in a lot of respects. She's already sanctioned all over the U.S. They already took some of her property. She was educated here. I forget what university, but she was educated in the United States, and she's been running RT for a very long time, and she is enemy number one in the news media from the Western side. I don't think so. I always found her pretty intelligent and reasonably gifted and fair, and a bit of a romantic. When you listen to her story, she's always talking about the way things that should be. She's often on the political program with Vladimir Solovyov, and she's often on that program. And she speaks very well. She's in her, I don't know, upper 40s, I think. Maybe she's only 45. I don't know. But she talks about the romantic parts, the way things ought to be, the ways things should be, blah, blah, blah. And it's nice to watch her. But she says, so she was on a TV program, and I can't tell which one it is, but she was on another one of those shows. Maybe it'll be somewhere in the article. But basically, I reported to you yesterday and the day before, I think, about the moron Merz talking about how there are no more limitations on Ukraine using Taurus missiles to attack inside of Russia. He can use and they can use Storm Shadows and what are I forget what the other ones are called. Damn it, the ones from France, I can't remember, but I'll have to figure that out at some point. But when she heard this, that she says the same thing that Peskov said, only there's an entire article about it, and she was on a program the other day. Basically, she says Russia can target Berlin if German missiles hit Moscow. And she's saying what everybody else is thinking about. Because if you send Taurus missiles, if you send U.S. ATACMS, if you send British Storm Shadows or the French, whatever they're called, then they must be targeted, as I told you last night, using the native intelligence and the native methods of targeting. Ukrainians cannot target them. So that would be a direct attack by the armed forces of whoever created or targeted the missile. So for a Taurus, it would be German. So she's basically saying we will retaliate because that's what Peskov said. That's what Putin has said on several occasions. So Russia would not rule out a direct strike on Berlin if German personnel help Ukraine target Moscow with German-supplied Taurus missiles, she said. Speculation that Germany could supply Ukraine with Taurus missiles capable of striking 500 kilometers away and reaching the Russian capital from Ukraine was reignited after Friedrich Merz, chancellor, said Berlin and its partners had lifted restrictions on the range of Western weapons that they're allowed to use. German officials have not confirmed any decision to send Taurus systems, and Bild on Wednesday suggested the government is still considers that doing so would be taboo. In a post on Wednesday, Simonyan warned that Germany could face dire consequences if the Taurus is ever used for attacking the Russian capital. In Moscow offices, it is being discussed that if German troops strike Moscow with German weapons, the only option left for us is to strike Berlin, she said. She went on to explain that a tourist strike on Moscow would have to be prepared and executed by German service members, like I'm telling you, because Ukrainians cannot maintain the Taurus or program it for flight missions. Absolutely true. Responding to Mertz's comments on lifting sanctions, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov noted that if such a decision had been made, it would lead to serious escalation and undermine current efforts to settle the Ukraine conflict. Previous German government led by ex-Chancellor Olaf Scholz had long refused to supply Ukraine with Taurus missiles, arguing that this would put Germany at risk of being drawn directly into the Russo-Ukraine conflict. And very much agree with those sentiments, friends and neighbors. So, Luxembourg now. Let's go on to Luxembourg, okay? And in Luxembourg, Fernand Kartheiser slammed Brussels' confrontational stance on Ukraine and urges renewed diplomacy with Moscow. Now, this is the third day in a row that somebody from somewhere is slamming, some European somebody is slamming the EU for not attempting to engage in talks with Moscow. So they're just as guilty now as the Biden administration was for 3.5 freaking years, never talking to anyone in Russia. Why? Because we don't like them. So if we don't like them, we don't talk to them. Is that right? Well, allegedly, we don't like China. We still talk to them. We don't like Iran. We still talk to them. You know, whoever we don't like, we should spend double the time talking to them. You ignorant morons. I suppose that's a double banger. If you're calling someone ignorant, they're already morons. Or no? Ignorant means they don't know, but moron is just more. Maybe that's okay to say. You ignoramus. How about that? Maybe that would work a little better. I don't know. We can tell. But the EU is isolating itself by doing this, not Russia. Remember, Russia is right now holding a peace conference in St. Petersburg with 100 countries present. They're not isolated, friends and neighbors. They're just not. In fact, more countries are hanging out with them that are interested in dealing with us. Unfortunate for us, not too shabby for them. Luxembourg MEP Fernand Kartheiser has argued that the EU's confrontational approach has led to its own isolation. The lawmaker made these remarks in an interview released Tuesday while on a trip to Russia that he was forced to fund personally because the European Parliament restricted him from going. So you can't go. Some people in the European Parliament have an attitude toward Russia that identifies it as a big threat. They think that if we put pressure on Russia and isolate it diplomatically, that might help to find solutions to in the context of the conflict in Ukraine. It is not the discussion that we should have. Kartheiser noted that the entire EU approach toward the Ukraine conflict and Russia has been counterproductive. You think? The guy's a genius. That's all there is to it. What we have now internationally is that basically everybody talks to Russia. We even have the U.S. coming back and having high-level contacts. The anti-Russia stance is diminishing, he said. So this policy of isolation of Russia basically has failed. The only ones who are isolated in a way are the EU itself, because the EU is the only one saying you must. I mean, hell, even Ukraine is talking to Russia. Isn't that so? Curious and curious. That's all I'm saying. That perhaps they should be attempting to speak to them more, not less. Don't you think? I don't know. I've always been much more of a more talk is better than less. Haha. That's because I have a talk show, right? Okay, here we go. The lawmakers' visit to Moscow at the invitation of the Russian State Duma, that's their Congress basically, aimed to discuss bilateral relations and the situation in Ukraine. The visit drew criticism from the old hawkish EU lawmakers. The European conservatives and reformist group threatened to expel Karteiser, claiming he had crossed a red line. By God, you can't go to Russia. What's wrong with you? The MEP called the threat a regrettable part of the picture and lamented that some EU lawmakers remain opposed to re-engaging with Moscow. The discussion that we should have is what kind of relationship do we want with Russia in the future? We have to open the dialogue again. That is important, he said. The MEP emphasized that if the EU wants to be taken seriously as an actor in international relations, it must abandon the anti-Russia policy and have some kind of relationship with the country again. If we, Western Europeans, are expected to take a larger responsibility for our own security, one way to assure this is by negotiating agreements with Russia, ensuring at the same time our security as Western Europeans and guaranteeing the security of Russia's western border. And who's been asking for that? Forever? Russia. So negotiation and diplomacy before rearmament and arms races, he concluded. Well, that sounds pretty damn bright, if you ask me. There you have it. Lavrov said some interesting comments. Europeans once again are rallying under the Nazi flag against Russia. Let's all fight in Ukraine's Azov brigades and condemn Russia. We can be Nazis there. There's been another major drone raid on Moscow that just occurred, and this is on the air right now. It's being played, and let's see, where is it? The Russian mayor says that it's ongoing now. Hundreds of drones going on. Not many details though. That's basically it. And it's live, so it's in Russian, so I can't really translate it for you on the fly. But all this talk that only Russia is attacking in the air Ukraine is all nonsense, friends and neighbors. Let's see. What else? Oh, we got to go back to the slap. Remember me playing the other day, the slap in the face by Macron's wife? There's an opinion article that was actually pretty good. Before we get to that, let's tell you, though, that Russia has proposed a date for next level of talks with Ukraine in Istanbul. And they're claiming that these talks, they've offered that these talks should resume on June the 2nd in Istanbul. And this was Sergei Lavrov. And he has just announced the next rounds, hoping for June the 2nd in Istanbul. So now we need Trump to get on his True Social and tell Zelensky he's got to go, that he's got to send a delegation, because that's the only way they got there last time. In a statement on Wednesday, Lavrov said the Russian delegation has prepared a memorandum outlining its terms for achieving a lasting resolution. So I want to see that Obviously, we won't see it until after this negotiated meeting, or this meeting on negotiations, hopefully in Istanbul. So basically, he said, our delegation, headed by Russia's top negotiator, Vladimir Medinsky, is ready to present this memorandum to the Ukrainian delegation and provide necessary clarifications during a second round of resumed direct negotiations in Istanbul next Monday. Lavrov expressed hope that all those who are sincerely interested in the success of the peace process and not merely paying lip service to it will support the new round of Istanbul direct Russia-Ukraine negotiations. Foreign Minister thanked Turkey, the U.S., and Saudi Arabia for facilitating dialogue between Moscow and Kiev. He added the talks earlier this month resulted in the prisoner swap of 1,000 people. We already talked about that. They're supposed to still get from the Ukrainians on the same day their proposals. So I like a good negotiation that starts with, you meet in a room, okay? And in this room, both parties sit there. You have an opening statement. They each give an opening statement of what they want to do. Then they have an exchange of documents and proposals, and then they break for a day, 2 days, whatever, for a brief period, and then they go back and talk with their powers that be. The Ukrainians can go and chat with Donald Trump if they have to, and then come back, get together again, and make counter proposals. It's going to take a little bit. In the meantime, Russia, the big difference, Ukraine and the West wants a ceasefire so that Ukraine can rebuild while this is going on, and they don't continue to lose territory to Russia. Russia's going, no, we're winning. We're not going to do that. The Kremlin also says that the Russian peace proposal is in its final stages, and that's why they're willing to set a date of June the, what did I say, the 2nd? Yep, June the 2nd. So there you have it. That is a good story. I also heard something that, and I don't know, JR probably did that, but I only got to hear part of JR's show today, and I didn't hear this, but did Musk step down on Doge? I don't know the answer to that. If somebody knows that and wants to talk about it, can give me a call, 573-746-8020. I'd be happy to chat about that. I'd like to know more. Wouldn't you like to know more? Yes, I would like to know more. That is why I listened to Samuel Edward von Trapp I in the first place, because he just knows more. We know more on damn radio, not less. We're the good guys, right? We're not the evil antichrist government employees that will screw you as soon as look at you. That's not our role. We're here to provide you valuable information and insights so that you can make decisions yourself, okay? And don't listen to blabbermouths that don't know anything. Come listen to damn radio. We all know everything. Or, here, the joke, right? Here's the joke. So we always used to tell people, me and my brother, we'd walk up to someone and say, between me and my brother, we know absolutely everything. And they say, really? It's like, yeah. Like if I don't know it, Russ does, and vice versa. If Russ doesn't know it, I do. And so we can always answer any question. So why don't you give it a shot? Give it a try. So, give us any question, whatever you feel like. And they give us a question like, okay, tell me, and they say, okay, Sam, what is the square root of 672,000? And I say, Russ knows that one. Next question, please. So between us all, we know everything. Okay. So there you have it. I'm babbling again, aren't I? Well, very, very apologetic over that fact of life, but I'm a babbler. I tend to babble. I am from Babylon. No, that's pretty funny. No humor there. Anybody gonna send me some clapping? Maybe a golf clap or something? We got nothing. Zero. Oh, Well, when in doubt, you can just do your own. Or, yeah, okay. Well, next topic then. Fine. We're going on. Merz, this genius Merz, who the Merz of the Taurus missile Merzes, he also vows to block Nordstream II. The German chancellor claims that Moscow is obstructing the Ukrainian peace process, and therefore he vows to increase pressure by sending Taurus missiles. Or he's going to prevent the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from being launched again. Russia's been repairing it, don't you know? German Chancellor Friedrich Merz pledges to do everything to prevent the Russian Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline from being launched. The gas interconnector from Russia through the Baltic Sea to Germany was destroyed by a series of underwater explosions in September 22 in an act of sabotage that Russia believes was orchestrated by Western intelligence agencies. But Merz's declaration comes as Moscow and Kiev draft respective proposals for bringing about a ceasefire. The talks mark a shift for Kiev, which abandoned diplomatic efforts in 2022 in favor of seeking military victory on orders from the West, from old Bojo, Boris Johnson. While Moscow has reported progress on its proposal, Ukraine's Zelensky and his EU backers are accusing Russia of stalling. But wait a minute, didn't I just say that they're ready to go back to the table on June the 2nd and their proposal is in its final days? Where's Ukraine's proposal? We don't see one. I imagine it'll be the same one that they gave with the victory plan, the same one with the peace plan, of the one that Zelensky floated around to the world and didn't include Russia in the talks at all. I mean, there you can settle with just one side, right? We just force Russia to do something. But anyway, Merz, the genius, says in his press conference with Zelensky in Berlin on Wednesday, Merz vows to further increase pressure on Russia and weaken Moscow's war machine through sanctions, including on Nord Stream 2. I say on behalf of the Federal Republic of Germany, we will do everything in this context to ensure that Nord Stream 2 cannot be put back into operation, he said. He claims that the measures aim to pave the way for negotiations, despite Moscow's criticism of Western sanctions policy. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission president, said earlier this month that Brussels had planned an 18th sanctions package, 18 packages of sanctions, to include measures aimed at Nord Stream 2 AG, the Swiss-based entity that owns the pipelines, and any other companies necessary for their restart and operation. Media reports have claimed that Merz has supported this move and that he has opened talks in Berlin and Brussels to prevent any revival of energy trade with Russia. They'd rather pay double and get it from the United States. You're a bunch of morons. A number of Europe, not that we hate them getting it from America. We're for that. We want them to pay double and get it from us. A bunch of idiots. More tea for Sam. Sorry about that. A number of European officials have opposed targeting the pipelines. Gee, wonder who blew them up. Guy named Florian Philippot, a prominent French Eurosceptic. Oh, that's a great word. I've never heard the word Eurosceptic. I want to be a Eurosceptic. I have to find the definition of Eurosceptic now. But let's finish the article first, and I will look that up. A prominent French Eurosceptic, with a K, by the way, has warned that such a move would amount to a death sentence for European industry. Michael Kretschmer, a prime minister of the German state of Saxony, has argued that Nord Stream is a possible opening for a conversation with Russia. adding that such talks would benefit Germany as its economy needs Russian gas supplies to function normally. Germany is failing miserably economically these days, friends and neighbors. Earlier reports claimed that Russia and the U.S. were exploring ways to resume shipment through the still intact line of Nordstream II. One of the Bloomberg people was supposed to be attempting to buy it. You remember that? I reported on that last year, but I don't remember much about that. Okay. Euroscepticism is a political term referring to opposition to the European Union and its policies of integration. It ranges from a criticism of specific EU institutions and policies to a rejection of the EU as a whole and of the idea of European unification. The key aspects: criticism of the EU, support for national sovereignty, opposition to further integration. Soft Euroscepticism involves support for the EU's existence but opposition to specific policies or further integration. Hard Euroscepticism, on the other hand, would be a more fundamental rejection of the EU project as a whole, calls for withdrawal or rejection of further integration. Well, it's exactly as it sounds then. He's a Eurosceptic. Well, maybe he was just against the euro as a currency. Who knows these things? Many things can happen in these days of trouble and gloom, when passing ruffians can say "ni" at will to old women. Let us see here. The U.S. is ready to apply maximum pressure on Russia, according to, what is her name? Tammy Bruce? Is that who that is? Yep. Tammy Bruce is in the photo, and she of the State Department Bruce's is saying that Donald Trump has already warned his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, against playing with fire. So sounds like the Lindsey Grahams and Marco Rubios of the world are starting to prevail in the Trump cabinet, and there won't be any of these smart moves like dumping Ukraine and getting out of the war completely. Maybe with the talks hopefully continuing on June the 2nd, Trumpster will again change direction and doing something else. Trump is prepared to apply maximum pressure on Russia if Ukraine peace talks fail to produce results, says Tammy Bruce. The U.S. president's patience has worn thin. Oh, gee, let's all get scared over that. What is he going to do about it? Seriously, what can he do? I would love to know some alternatives to get him out of here. The sanctions aren't going to work. Telling Russia what to do is not going to work. You don't have the authority to tell them what to do. What are you going to do? Go to war with them? If you're not going to go to war with them, then you must do something diplomatic. And if you're going to do something diplomatic, it isn't just saying, oh, that Putin's crazy, after you have a 2-hour conversation with him that goes very well. You know he's not crazy. And playing with fire, he is doing the exact things that he said he was going to do, and you can't pretend as if you didn't know it. You have known forever. If I have known forever what Vladimir Putin has said he was going to do, you cannot claim remotely that the alleged expert geniuses don't know, and you can't claim that Trump himself doesn't know. He knows what Russia's going to do, and much of that 2-hour conversation, I guarantee you, was exactly that. Was Putin saying, you know, we have said this for a long time, and nobody has listened to us. Now you're listening. Where were you when I said the exact same thing to Tucker Carlson in February 2024? President Trump, where were you? You know, of course, he was basically fighting the big machine of the state trying to destroy him. So maybe he didn't hear the Tucker Carlson interview. But now he can't complain. He's been the president since January. He knows. And he also knows there's no way out of this except to quit funding eternal war. So no one has suggested anything else except new sanctions packages. It's not going to help. Everybody's avoiding them. Everybody. And nobody wants them. And they don't do you any good. They don't do you any good. If you can't control the entire world, which clearly we don't, heck, we can't even control Israel. Can we? We can't even control the Houthis. And I don't mean that badly. We don't want to. This is not something Americans are for. We don't give a shnikes about the Houthis. We don't care about the, what do you call it? The Suez Canal. We don't care. Not our problem. Okay? And nor should it be. At any rate, let us continue. The U.S. presentation has worn thin, and he expressed his frustration in his recent post on Truth Social. Earlier this week, Trump stated that Russian President Putin had gone crazy following a series of retaliatory strikes carried out by Moscow in Ukraine. So it's not crazy, apparently, for Zelensky to be bombing Moscow with 100 drones or 200 drones a night. That's not crazy. That's not escalation. Nothing from the Ukrainian side is anything other than proper behavior, right? It's proper behavior to attack Russian civilians and Russian infrastructure. But you answer, and you're playing with fire there, Vlad. Over the past week, the Russian Defense Ministry has intercepted more than 2,300 Ukrainian drones targeting Russian cities, including several hundred heading toward the capital in Russia. Moscow. Hello, how's the family? 2,300, okay, in a week. That's 300 a day on average, right? Bruce stated that Trump could resort to using all the tools at his disposal, including additional sanctions on Moscow. More sanctions. The restrictions are part of a draft bill being pushed by Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. Oh, gee, he's a prominent Russia hawk. He's a prominent war lover. That's what he is. He don't give a crap about Russia. He cares about more war. More war, more war. He doesn't care where. He's never met a war he couldn't support. It wouldn't matter. He could be bringing in the army to bombard his own house to get rid of his own wife. I guarantee you he'd support it if they put enough money in his pocket, for his next election campaign. It includes sanctions of up to 500% on all countries that continue to purchase Russian oil, gas, and other goods. Yeah, that's really going to stop them. America is ready to do maximum pressure framework on Russia, Bruce said, warning that Moscow will soon understand Trump's commitment to achieving a settlement of the Ukraine conflict. So basically, Russia has to capitulate. Russia must capitulate, not Ukraine, right? When do we force Ukraine capitulation? I guarantee you, here's what's going to happen at the June 2nd meeting. The Russians are going to come in with the exact same demands that they have had since the beginning of this, okay? And these are going to be Istanbul Plus, the first one, from 2022. And now the plus would be because, and during Istanbul 2022, there were only 2 regions that had already voted to be part of Russia, and that was Lugansk and Donetsk. Now Zaporizhia has voted. Now Kherson has voted, and they have had referendums, and they wish to be part. So now there's 4. And before too long, Dnepropetrovsk, which is also east of the Dnieper River, and probably Kharkov, and maybe even Sumy, which are all east of the Dnieper River, and are all 60 to 80% Russian, will probably elect to join as well if a referendum was put in place, but Russia hasn't asked for that. They say they're creating this buffer zone up along the top. So the only thing that might change is they'll come back and go, give us the Istanbul Plus, which is now 4 territories instead of 2, which is now you're going to be demilitarized, you're going to be neutral. You're going to be neutral, and you cannot be a part of NATO. And you cannot continue to discriminate against the Russian language, the Russian culture, and the Russian people and destroy them. You can't kill them because they're Russian. You can't deny them schooling, all the language sorts of things. And you can't be Nazis. You need to make some kind of rule about that. Okay, so those are going to be the exact same things that are going to come into play when they talk on June the 2nd, the exact same ones. Recognize reality on the ground. Here's what Ukraine's going to ask for. Ukraine's going to say, okay, well, we want all the territories back, including Crimea, which you took in 2014. We want that back. You aren't recognizing our territorial integrity. Well, because they all have said, they've all said, we want to be part of Russia. And Crimea, long gone. Donetsk, Lugansk, long gone. The other 2, a year later, long gone. You're never getting those 4 back. You need to recognize reality on the ground. So if you come in and you say, we want these places to go back, well, now I tell you what, we'll honor Minsk 1 and Minsk 2. We'll follow those, which said that those could be semi-independent parts still of Ukraine and have the Russian language be protected and have all those things be protected. They could have kept them if they'd have done that, but no. You have to destroy those Russian language people. You have to kill them all. You have to tell them they can't speak Russian, even if that's all they speak. You can't, so you got to shut up. You better walk around with your own little interpreter to translate everything that you say into Ukrainian. So what, and I only tell you that little group of a story to say, what in the world then is Trump going to do to end this war? Him saying things like, Putin's playing with fire or he's crazy aren't helping. They aren't helping anything. And does he have any ideas on how to end this? Does he? Other than having them talk? If you continue to fund it, the Ukrainians will continue to steal all the money. They'll try to figure out how to keep on bombing inside of Russia. They'll keep sending 2,300 drone attacks a week into Russia. And then when Russia retaliates and sends drones into Ukraine, you get to continue to call Vladimir Putin crazy and playing with fire because he responds. You're not allowed to respond. You're supposed to just sit there. Why? Because we're the West and we said so. Nonsensical nonsense, friends and neighbors. So, following Trump's outburst on social media, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov suggested that Western media outlets were pressuring the U.S. president to say such things and were effectively engaging in a campaign aimed at derailing the peace process and provoking the U.S. into imposing new sanctions. Because that's what the deep state wants. If you've ever met a person more deep state inclined than Lindsey Graham, I'd ask you to tell me who that is. I would say one of the Clintons, but they are allegedly no longer involved in the government. You know, if who's next? You know, if you could have said, what was the vice president for Bush? Cheney. There's a nice deep stater. You know, you could pick one of those guys, but he's no longer around, friends and neighbors. And so, if you find one, this article is absolutely correct. Why do I have to read to you from Russian sources in order to make the points here? It's because our sources are all full of lies. Now, these are also twisted, by the way. They're twisted toward the Russian side. But this makes sense. This actually makes sense. Ours do not. I mean, just Trump going out and going, oh, gee, that Putin's crazy. That is, what help is that? What sort of diplomacy are we playing here? So how does Marco Rubio go out and implement that policy of Donald Trump, the Putin's crazy playing with fire policy. That's the new policy. Film at 11. We'll give you a new film that'll tell you how it is. Peskov applauded Trump for maintaining a balanced approach toward Ukraine peace negotiations, noting that the talks must address the root causes of the conflict and will likely require some time to resolve. If he could ever get it through his head that there will not be a ceasefire, then he should probably go, well, we're not giving you any more money, right? And on that same topic, there's another article, and this one's called Trump is Getting Filtered Information on the Ukraine Conflict. I've been telling you that. Nobody's telling Trump. They can't be telling Trump that the Ukrainians are sending 2,300 drones a week in, or he'd go, well, you know, the Russians are only sending 1,500 a week. That's less. That is actually less. So what's the story here? I don't know. Top Putin aide Yuri Ushakov has suggested that Trump is not sufficiently informed about ongoing Ukrainian attacks in Russian cities. Trump knows only about retaliatory measures that we are taking, he said, adding that Russia strikes only target military infrastructure or defense industries. Sergei Lavrov has noted that Trump is only getting filtered information on the conflict prepared by those who want to draw America into more aggressive action against Russia in support of the Kiev regime, namely Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, and company. That is the name of that tune. That's crazy stuff. What else do we have here? The geniuses in the UK are eyeballing a permanent Arctic military presence. I don't think they're in the Arctic. I don't think so. But let's read the story anyway. London has teamed up with Nordic NATO member states in what Russia views as a dangerous militarization of the region. Oh boy. Remember, this is coming, right? That's why Trump wanted the old Greenland. And whatever happened to that proposal? Where'd that go? Has that just disappeared into the archives of history? Or is there something going on there? I don't think so. I think it was fun and a nice distraction, but there's obviously no meat in those hamburgers. Those are your like the Impossible sandwich at Starbucks. There ain't no meat in there, boys and girls. It's made out of soy burger. Well, maybe it's not soy burger, but it's certainly plant-based. So, but there's no meat. No meat. While NATO has been actively ramping up its military capabilities in the Arctic, London has made a point of strengthening individual partnerships with Norway and Iceland. Russia has insisted that NATO's militarization of the Arctic is unwarranted and that Moscow will have to mirror its move to maintain the balance. In an article Wednesday, Telegraph says there is speculation that Labour's forthcoming strategic defense review will result in British forces being permanently stationed in the Arctic. In a post on X, on Tuesday, UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy began a visit to Norway and Iceland, where further military buildup is topping the agenda. Well, remember, London's military is huge, less than 100,000. In a post on X the following day, he wrote that the Arctic is NATO's northern flank. Oh, yeah. Speaking to Telegraph, Lammy stated the region is fast becoming an area of intense focus. Yeah, you're behind Russia, a generation behind. Further claiming that Russia has been building up its military presence here for years. True, and it has the only nuclear-powered ice-breaking fleet in the world, and the rest of you have none. And so Russia is the only one that can guarantee shipping through the region. Isn't that right? It absolutely is. At any rate, interesting story. What else did I want to read from the other side of the world? What with me being a new Eurosceptic and all, perhaps I could find something anti-EU to talk about. I never knew this. Now, this is being reported from Russia, but I did not know this. We'll have to verify this. But according to the Russian newspaper, U.S. military command could exit Africa. Now, that would be interesting. The move comes months after the Pentagon was forced to withdraw its troops from several regions. Washington's African Military Command, AFRICOM, has announced plans to reassess its presence on the continent as countries increasingly rethink defense ties with the West and shift their alliances. AFRICOM Commander General Michael Langley told reporters in Kenya on Tuesday that he had already discussed the matter with several African defense ministers and heads of state. I've talked to a number of ministers of defense and a few presidents and told them we are assessing what I tell them. If we are that important to you, you need to communicate that, and we'll see if we remain. Frankly, we're not very important to them, and they'd like us to leave. They've been booting out the French and the British and us for the last 10 years, and it's ramping up. They're getting rid of us even quicker. They're making us leave. The move follows reports in the U.S. media that Trump is considering merging AFRICOM with Eurocom in Stuttgart, Germany, saying it's more efficient. AFRICOM was established in 2008, ostensibly to consolidate U.S. military effort on the continent and offer a response to growing security concerns, including Islamic insurgency. However, its influence is declining in parts of Africa. Washington has previously insisted on finding a way to maintain its military presence in the region, despite being ordered to remove its forces from the key Sahel states, Niger and Chad. That's quite true. And last September, the Pentagon completed a withdrawal of assets and approximately 1,000 troops from a $100 million base in Niger following a request by the West African country's government, whose military leadership cited the contingent's failure to curb jihadist militants in the region. U.S. Department of Defense withdrew 70 personnel from an air base near N'Djamena, capital of Chad, America's only military site in the country, after being ordered to do so by Chad officials. Despite recent setbacks, Reuters quoted Langley as saying the U.S. continues some intelligence sharing arrangements with military regimes and is exploring other ways to stay engaged. France has been forced to withdraw from Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali as the governments in those countries pursue alternative alliances, including closer ties with Russia. Yes. There's another article called Africa's Military Breakup with France is Now Official. And it is. That one is official. France completely loses its military presence in the same region. Senegal, Chad, Côte d'Ivoire, the Ivory Coast, in late 2024, and expressed their intent to terminate military contacts completely with Paris. French troops have already left Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Interim governments in these countries, formed after military coups, no longer want to cooperate with their former colonizers and aim to unite under a new confederation known as the Alliance of Sahel States. These nations have opted to leave the economic community of the West African states, viewed as a tool for maintaining French influence in the region. One of these guys was invited and had a contingent of its soldiers marching in Moscow. He's very young, and I forget his name, but there are plenty of talks between all three of these nations with Russia. There's a lot of countries in Africa getting rid of the U.S. and European allies and going with Russia and China. because there they will get money for infrastructure that isn't tied to military and isn't tied to changing to democracy or changing to communism. They get the money and they make a partnership, a business partnership. Where are our efforts to create business partnerships with people instead of dictating what sort of republic they will have? I don't know. I think we need to reconsider how we govern. If we intend to be governors of the world, perhaps we should change the way we intend to do so. Don't you think that would be a good idea for us? But no, we never do that. We always must force our ways upon everyone, whether they want them or not. We dictate austerity measures, but we don't engage in any ourselves. We'll give you some money through U.S. Agency for International Development, but boy, you got to cut down on some of them damn social programs and quit giving people so much. But here in the U.S., we don't require any of that. In fact, we give more. We give money to foreigners that show up and to say that they're disabled. They get money, or they don't even have to. They just get to put their hand out and instantly get paid. Why? Because a vote is worth $2,300 a month plus a $900 food stamp card, isn't it? Maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe, but I'm not positive. Let's talk to this caller and see if he has anything exciting to tell us. Hello, caller. How may I help you this evening?
Hello, show host. You're on late, so are you still in Florida?
I am. That's right.
So it's like darn near a midnight over there.
It's 11:05 in the P&M.
Right. And it's 10:05 here. So how do you like
You're a
doing
genius. Oh, my God. You are a damn genius.
Well, some people have said that I have a high IQ, but I don't trust them. I don't believe them.
I can't even spell IQ, so you're very far ahead of me.
So why did you change your show to late in the evening?
Well, for several reasons. One, I do like the later version. I like the live part at this time, and it's actually so I was often so I'm a real estate broker here in Florida and in Missouri. If anybody wants to buy property, all you got to do is email me at samuelt@internationalflavor.com, and we'll sell you something right over the internet. And at any rate, I would go and I generally work in new housing and with new construction. And so I would end up a couple of times a week sitting in places, and it was causing a problem with the show times that were because and the internet wouldn't work there, and I didn't like doing it on the phone. I would prefer to be in my little mini studio at home and not doing it from an office I was in or from somewhere else. So and I like it. It's more comfortable this way, and it's gotten for me 10 times more regular and efficient, I believe.
Good.
I think the quality of the shows has gone up too, because I have a little bit of time to prepare and get at least my thoughts ready. I babble anyway, as I tend to do. So what can I do for you? Would you just call to ask that question, or you got anything exciting to add?
Well, I did call primarily to ask that question. I must compliment you and your broadcast partners on the quality of the audio. It is top notch, man. It's clear. It's wonderful. It's fun. It's good. It's easy listening. You know what I mean? When I go into my places, my mental places, I like to rely on something that's trustworthy and soothing. And you provide that to me, Sam, as does JR. And sometimes I get excited with Ike and whatnot and use the F word from time to time, which is the real reason I called. So we can use the words thermonuclear war, abortion, and transgender on the radio, but we can't use the FUCK word on the radio. What the F, bro? That's the reason I call.
You can. We're not on the radio, by the way. We are an internet radio station, and so we can do whatever we want. But for me, I'd prefer to keep that to a minimum. Not that I don't do it myself from time to time. I mean, everybody knows that, but I don't know of any rule that says we can't say whatever the F we want to. It's just I generally do not.
And how far does that F go? You know, if you take the F to you say UCK, it's you've crossed a line. But if you take the F to LIP, you know, you're okay. I'm just saying that how far
it's only a word. It's only a word, and you can go as far as you like. But some people just, bro. Well, I agree, but sometimes it's in civilized groups. For example, like when I was a kid, you use that mouth to talk to your mother, you know, that kind of thing. And if your mother doesn't want to hear it, then you probably shouldn't say it.
That is a fair. That's a fair response, and I will take that, and I will leave you with your show. That is a very good response. Good night.
Yep. Have a good one. Thanks for the call.
Yep.
And there he goes. And we always appreciate the calls, and I like chatting to people. And I appreciate JR for getting on and increasing the volume, because apparently I wasn't paying sufficient attention. And it did sound better after he did it. So I'm still a novice, which is really sad, because I think, now JR could inform me better of this, I think that we are actually coming up on a year of shows. And I don't remember the day. He told me several weeks ago because I asked him, but I don't remember. Hell, I can't remember what I did yesterday. But I think we're coming up on a year. And we should have a big-ass celebration. You know what we'll do? I will talk for 24 hours. I'll do what that guy did was he a senator or a state rep not long ago that spoke for that filibustered for 26 hours or something? I forget. I think he was against the old Trumpster. I don't remember who it was or even what the damn topic was. So very important, I'm sure, that he speak for that many hours. But I always appreciate the calls. I do want to get to a little bit of bitching today. See there? See what I just did there, caller? I just gave something to you. But before I do, I will point out that the Africa, to finalize that story, and there's a very good story about it that came out not too long ago called Adieu. Africa's military breakup with France is official. They've been being booted out. And now the U.S. is saying that AFRICOM, the African Command, is also likely to be disbanded. They're being asked to leave as well. They no longer want us. We've done nothing for them is the problem. We come in, our job has always been, and this is unfortunate because we've squandered opportunities like crazy around the world by not going in and assisting people in creating a government and a structure and coaching them. We've used it as our own politicians' get rich quick area. If you're a politician, you can fund something in Niger and spend $7 million on it and get a kickback of whatever, and you got your instant wealth. Okay, you get the right contractors in there to build your $100 million military base in a little town, little country called Chad. And 5 years later, somebody gets booted off it, but you don't care because you've already gotten your kickbacks and your non-governmental organizations that are over there getting freebies from the U.S. Agency for International Development outside of any governmental foundation, and then you have senators and state representatives all complaining that vehicle for democracy, the vehicle for democracy is being destroyed by Doge, and that Musk is killing what we've been stealing for years. He's getting rid of the possibility for us to take it. Those people are not the good guys. And so they have squandered opportunities in countries that could have benefited from us treating them like adults instead of 3-year-olds, and treating their countries in an adult manner instead of just all those third world countries, boy, that's where you go to get rich, and we'll throw the military in there, but they're all corrupt and we aren't going to teach them to be any different. And we put this government in power by coup, by what do you call it? U.S. Agency for International Development going around the world and creating a Ukraine-style democracy everywhere by creating the right, by installing our own puppet regimes with our own puppet money, with our own NGO funding, and our own senators and House representatives and military officials and anybody involved in the process getting rich in the process. Of course, the country, the country, the benefit to the country that you're actually attempting to quote unquote help, that's last on the list. Nobody cares about them. All we care about is the get rich quick schemes of all of the players involved, every single step down the line, including the AFRICOM command. And so I don't know. Frankly, I'd like to see more of this because we're not doing it correctly anyway. If we want to be the international players that the world thought we were, which, frankly, they don't, but which we in America thought we were, the international players doing good around the world, curing poverty, curing all of these things, taking care of AIDS, but we haven't cured poverty anywhere. We just keep spending the money there, and the rich get richer and keep sucking it dry. And 10% of the money that you sent over to aid the poor, 10% actually gets to their hands, and all the rest goes to fund the next junta, the next Maidan, the next wherever, the next puppet leader is funded. Well, now I only have 15 minutes left. I was going to start with about a half hour to get through it, but I wonder if I can run my way through it. Before I do, I did want to point out that I have been getting, and I appreciate this, a good amount of downloads of my podcasts from my internationalflavor.com. So those of you who don't get the chance to listen live nightly from 9 to 10:30 p.m. Missouri time, you can always find the podcast out at internationalflavor.com. And you can go back and listen to them all. I title them, I put them out there. Sometimes I even share them on Facebook. And so I'm trying to rebuild my Facebook page, which was, destroyed back when. I already told that story. Not going to tell it again. But I try to share the fact that I'm going to be live on Damn Radio and do all of those things, and to keep the effort going. And also on damnradio.com/podcasts, you can always find many, many good shows out there. Not only me and International Flavor, you can also hear the good shows that are put out by Ike Skelton, by JR, by Gabby Hayes. That was I like listening to him and his rants about he was on and I don't know why I'm telling this, but I just want him to know it was funny that I listened to him on Ike's show here a couple hours ago, and he called in and and I liked how he talked about it as just a completely separate issue from what Ike was talking about, and I thought it was pretty damn funny. And I'll take any topic. I don't care. And apparently Ike did too. But if I had a guest, I'd prefer that you talked about what the guest wanted to talk about. I thought it was hilarious, but it was pretty good. And it was actually arguably it was on topic, but not really. And but it was still entertaining because he's entertaining to listen to anyway, and very knowledgeable. And Ike is extremely knowledgeable, and I like listening to him. So you want good show content? It's here on Damn Radio. We all have reasonably good talk shows. I tend to babble a lot and sometimes get off in the weeds somewhere on personal stories and whatnot. But it's okay sometimes. I've got some fairly interesting stories, that come about on corruption and what happened to me. And I wanted to spend some time today and do some more chatting about the differences between licensing organizations in Missouri specifically. And I spend some time and I go into this topic every once in a while, and try to get people to understand, which they may already do, and I don't want to oversimplify, but the BS. See there, Todd, I can say the word BS, but I couldn't say the word bullshit. I couldn't say that, see, because that would deviate from my desired content on this program, and from JR's desire to sometimes keep it clean. But I'm late night. I should be able to say whatever I want. Well, maybe I have to wait till after midnight. I don't know. But the thing that gets me, and a lot of states have addressed this problem, and so I'll tell you what I was planning to do. And if my brother doesn't continue our event tomorrow night, which I hope he does, but honestly, I've been pretty busy this week and haven't spoken to him yet. And what with it being a shorter week, he's been busy too and hasn't contacted me. But I'm presuming that he will probably be on the show tomorrow night, which is Thursday. But if he's not, I will intend to go into this a little deeper. But my thought on this is the BS in Missouri, and frankly, it's one of 12 states, I think it is, and I'll have to go through those numbers and find out for sure, that does not have a statutory list of requirements for a lawyer in the state. And basically, the place in Missouri, the rules, if you want to call them that, or lack of rules in Missouri, means that very much like the nonpartisan, and I say that, definitely facetiously, they call it that, but it's certainly not nonpartisan, selection process of picking judges by unelected NGO type officials that belong to the Missouri bar but aren't appointed under any vote, under any appointment process, or even any court rule. So, where does the Missouri bar derive its power to do these things? It derives its power from itself and from the abdication of imposing any rules by the real government. And so that is the topic I wish to go into. And it is, lawyers know this. Lawyers aren't stupid in general, although I've met my share of morons with nice sheepskin diplomas from some pretty expensive places. And, there's still, like I always say, you can't swing a dead cat around here without running into an idiot, without striking an idiot. And that is definitely true in the halls of justice, if you want to call it that, of the Missouri bar. And I think that it's long past the time to get rid of the non-partisan selection committee, which is a committee of self-appointed lawyers that tells the governor who he's going to pick. They pick the 3 to send up to him for a judgeship, which is a BS proposition, no matter how you slice it. And it starts with how you get a license in the first place. So what I have done, and I've already completed it, and I could probably spend a full hour on it, because with storytelling, it'll probably be, a full show on it, because with storytelling, it'll certainly stretch into the time. And I've only got 5 minutes to explain what I intend to go into. But what I want to go into is as follows. I want to talk about the rules and the law and the statute and the regulation. Now remember, judiciary branch, rule. Legislative branch, statute. Executive branch, regulation. So those are the 3 bases of authority in the state of Missouri and everywhere else. You have rules, you have regulations, and you have statutes. Those are laws, okay? And they can be interpreted by the courts. And they interpret them through case law, right? So you have the 3 bases of power, and the Missouri bar has none of those, okay? They are self-appointed people that elect themselves by the good old boy club. If you are nice to me, I'll make sure your name goes in the hat for the next judgeship, and it'll go before the governor to pick the next judge. BS. That ain't how it's supposed to be. I'd prefer to have an election, no doubt, of whoever is there, or I'd prefer to have an appointment by the governor with an advising consent by the Senate or the House of Representatives, some form of selection process that isn't just a crew of self-appointed yahoos that get to have their own deep state, and the deep state in Missouri is the Missouri bar. That's the basis of where it all starts, is right there. And so I wanted to review basically the only profession that is only approached by rule is for at least how you get appointed or how you get a license is the practice of law. If you wish to get a license as a barber, the authority is the Missouri Board of Cosmetology, an executive branch thing, right? If you want to get a license as a bail bondsman, the Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance, right? If you want to get a license as a real estate broker, the Missouri Real Estate Commission, right? If you want to get a license as a doctor, the statutory authority is the Missouri Board of Registration of the Healing Arts. If you wish to get a license to own a title company, Missouri Department of Commerce and Insurance, Division of Insurance, right? If you wish to get where's the other ones I've looked at? A financial advisor, statutory authority, Missouri Securities Division, and all of these are statutory or regulatory. The only one that is rules-based is the practice of law. And the difference of how this goes and why it's important, we will get into tomorrow. And I will go through those professions that I reviewed for you and go through their statutory authority, go through some of the BS provisions that allow the Missouri bar to do what it does in the practice of law and in the non-regulation, the abdication of any authority from any source in Missouri means the Missouri bar is the only quasi-agency that runs itself with nobody to look over it. except the self-appointed band of yahoos that want to do whatever it is they want to do. As we near the end of the show, which is coming up even now, I would say that I appreciate you all for listening, that the program is here every night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time from Sunday through Thursday. And you can always listen to the show on internationalflavor.com, and all the podcasts are there for your listening pleasure. Or you can go to damradio.com/podcasts and listen to me and all the other program hosts at your convenience. I appreciate having you. Feel free to listen tomorrow. If my brother is not here tomorrow, we're going to go through the provisions of what I said. Otherwise, that'll begin on Sunday night. Thank you very much and have a very nice night.